Okay, should we transition? Thank you so much, Ginny. That was really
Yeah, you're
fun.
welcome. Yeah, my pleasure.
So I'm really excited to welcome Jonathan Shelley, a new faculty member here at Fisher, and to hear all about how you've jumped right in and started using the iPad with your students. So introduce yourself, please, Jonathan, and then take it away.
Sure. Well, thank you so much, Kristen, and thank you to Emma for inviting me to present here. Again, I'm Jonathan Shelley. I'm an assistant professor in English. I specialize in Renaissance and early modern literature. So Shakespeare, which I'll be talking about shortly. Shakespeare and his contemporaries are kind of my wheelhouse. That's probably the easiest way to explain or describe the field of literature that I mainly do. Ginny, thank you for that. As a kind of transplant from California by way of Georgia, I needed to know about strategies from plants to shed snow and sort of not collapse under weight and everything like that. So that was sort of exactly the kind of information I needed. So I'm here to talk about an in-class exercise that I had students do in my Shakespeare on Film class, which uses the iPad. I'm going to confess that my presentation is a little less appy. It's definitely less appy than Ginny's, and I will confess that it's a little more hardware based, but I do have my trusty iPad, and I value very much actually the kinds of things that this has enabled in the class. And by that I mean in terms of this is a bit of more of a hardware, or the assignment I'm going to go through is enabled by the fact that the students have all access to kind of the same hardware, namely the camera. There's kind of a couple levels though to this assignment in terms of what it's meant to do or to teach students. So I want to go through those, and I'll do it by way of describing the class more generally. So Shakespeare on Film, I think the Shakespeare part makes the most sense for people who know me as someone in an English or literature department, being that we read Shakespeare and we think about, the value of Shakespeare as literature and the ways in which he can inform our understanding of history, inform our understanding of ethics, and so on. Of course, my class has the Shakespeare on Film part. So we are also sort of 50% watching filmic adaptations of Shakespeare. Perhaps enhances, perhaps how this medium alters, changes, or potentially even affects your understanding of the Shakespeare plays you are reading. So that's sort of like the kind of most practical way to think about how would film fit into a literature class. I think of it as kind of another tool to help understanding in some kind of way. But the other part of film that I'm interested in the students doing is to think critically about film and to really be able to identify the technical and formal features of the film in order to really be able to describe and explain what film does. I'll put it like this, and this is where I sort of think about the iPad and I think about its capabilities, which is to say that there's lots of theories that I've had them read about. The camera and the invention of the camera is a new eye with which we can see the world and we start to conceive of the world. And in this way, the camera or other kinds of media recording tools, you could even say like audio recorders, these are never neutral. A camera angle, how you film something is itself an argument. A camera angle is an argument. How you set up your microphone to capture audio in something is motivated by many things, political, cultural, and so on. And so in a lot of ways, to also think about something like film is to also think about some of sort of like the foundational values of sorts you have and how you see things and how you conceive of things and the composition. But with that, this assignment itself was a bit simpler, and I'll go in the stages that we did it. So the first was, I'll just share this resource because I do think it's helpful for understanding the larger exercise. So let me go. I'll full screen this first. So we first did some readings that involved getting familiar with technical terms in film. And I'm not going to have us go through all of this, but I'll just highlight some. So this was sort of the main reading that I had them do, this glossary from closely watched films that talks about the particular techniques that narrative film use. You can see this reading has broken it down into thinking about shots, thinking about editing techniques, thinking about transitions, thinking about shot continuity. I think I'm going to put particular emphasis for a second on two categories. Shot type, this is very important. So you can see close-up, big close-up, medium close-up, medium shot, medium long shot, full shot, long shot, extreme long shot, establishing shot. And I think it's also important to pay attention to camera movement here. So pan or panorama shot, swish pan, tilt, traveling shot, crane shot. I'm gonna give this list to you. I don't expect you all to be experts, but remember these. So for example, Ginny, when I was watching yours, I couldn't help but notice that your students used what I think we would call a close-up or even a big close-up to get onto the needles and everything. So this is the first piece of information that I wanted students to have, is they wanted them to be able to identify different kinds of shots that they might use or that they see being used in narrative films they watch. So when we began our reading of Romeo and Juliet, the prompt I gave them was, I want you to go and film a portion of dialogue from Romeo and Juliet, and I want you to do it with a certain kind of shot. Now this I made randomized, so I actually have the materials from this. There were several possibilities that they could be handed. They could be handed the prologue, line 1 to 8. They might have chosen randomly Act 1, Scene 2, line 89 to 94, Act 1, Scene 4, line 103 to 110, any of these. So they had to choose one of these cards. The second card that they would then have to choose at random was a particular shot type. So they might have chosen close-up, medium close-up, long shot. So if you can imagine how this might work, they might have gotten something like, okay, I have to film the prologue as a medium close-up shot. Or I'm going to do another random one here. Act 1, Scene 2, line 20 to 5 as a crane shot, or something. So this was the prompt, and I did this in a single class. So they would choose these, and then they had, roughly 30 minutes to go around to find out how they would do this. And that was I will just say too, I think like in thinking about the abilities of the iPad, I think its portability is really a big part of this, that they can actually go out places and do this kind of work. I also think about it in a kind of like post-COVID world. I try to think a lot about like, what are the kinds of things you can do in class that you just could not do on Zoom, in this way that it's like, in some ways you can do lecture on Zoom and it's sort of not much different, but, I can't necessarily have students go and film scenes or creative scenes if they're not there in person. But here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to share two examples, and I'm going to tell you all, I'm going to kind of force you to be like students for a second. I'm going to ask you to identify, not the Shakespeare, but maybe try to at least identify the camera shots. So like I do in my class, I'm not allowing you all to be passive observers here or anything. I'm going to admit this first example. I don't remember. I don't remember what part this is, but I think you'll be able to identify some of the shots. So let's start with this one. Oh, can you see it? Or no? No. Okay, let me try that again. Sorry about that.
It's okay. It said that you started screen sharing, but we hadn't seen anything.
Oh,
we didn't see
okay.
anything yet.
Let's do this one. Let's do this one then first. I think this one should work. Okay, can you see this?
Yep.
All right, perfect. Then I will start it from the beginning.
Two households, both alike in dignity, in fair Verona, where we lay our scene, from ancient grudge break to new mutiny, where civil bloods make civil hands unclean. From forth the fatal loins of those two foes, a pair of star-crossed lovers take their life, whose misadventured Pythias overthrows, doth with their death bury their parents' strife.
Okay, so that was number one. I throw it to the audience. Any ideas about what kind of, I think, Ginny, you know where this is from very impressively, what play this is from, but any guesses as to what kind, so this is the prologue to Romeo. Emma, you got it. Yes, so this was a crane shot, which they did an excellent job. My favorite part of this was when they got crane shot, they said, I don't think we can do this. We don't have a crane, to which I said, oh, but you don't need a crane like necessarily to get the effect of a crane shot and everything. And so they very dutifully, found some way to hoist, to someone to be high on. So I really like this one. I also, and Ginny, after seeing yours, I think I'll have to look into like giving some primers on some sound software, but I was really impressed with how they inventively like dealt with the sound issue, which was they just had someone read near the microphone and had someone sort of mouth the words. So I thought that was very creative, and it kept someone from having to memorize, I think, in like a short period of time, the whole prologue. So let me try the second one. This one's fun too. I'm not going to fill screen for this because that seemed to be doing something, but can you see a bigger one now with a maroon backdrop? Let's look at this one.
Look to like it's looking like a move, but no more deep will I endart mine eye. Then your consent gives strength to make it fly.
Madame, the guests are come, supper served up. You called, my young lady asked for it. The nurse cursed in the pantry, and everything in extremity. I must hence to wait. I beseech you, follow straight.
Okay, so this one kind of used two because they did use, I think, iMovie to make an edit. But are there any guesses? So this one would be so much a long shot. This would probably start as a medium shot, and then I think for the student they did like a close-up. I actually, like a medium shot to a big close-up. And I liked this one too because, even in its simplicity, it's really just two kinds of shots, but it does illustrate the real effect that like having this cut from one shot to another has, which I think when we watch movies ourselves, precisely because skilled editing kind of makes you not see shots in a lot of ways. I mean, you lose sight of them, but I think the emotional effect of film's usage of shots is still very much there, even if you're not necessarily picking up on them all the way. But I do like the way this team was very deliberate about the use of the shot and the way that you could really feel how your attention changes and how your mood sort of changes and your feeling changes just with that. So again, I have really enjoyed having like the hardware of the iPad as a tool, both in terms of like the access, everyone has this camera, but then also thinking about the kinds of hardware that it has as critical pieces, as that is to say that these are tools that can make critiques and everything. So thank you.
Jonathan, that was really fun. And I would argue that it's not just the hardware. I mean, because if you didn't have those iPads, the students would have had to watch video clips that you chose, right? That somebody else made those decisions, did the creation. I have to imagine that for the students to be able to go out and have to think about creating that and applying that to what they were learning had to make a huge difference in what that experience was like for them. Did they give you any feedback?
They have. I think there's a couple things. Like I appreciate these students because they were very eager to be on camera. There were a lot of teams that actually went. I said they didn't have to be on camera if they didn't want to. So they just recruited other students like around campus to read the lines and they filmed, which was very interesting. But to go to your point, Kristen, what I've enjoyed about this and like this thing is, it's something that forces, and I don't know if I want to say forces, but it makes students active participants, so to speak, rather than just like passive recipients of, say, adaptation or film. And I mean, I suppose the reticence of them to appear on camera is kind of like the halfway measure of like, I don't want to like be a literal and figurative actor in the world yet or something like that. But I think it's pushing them that way, and very much like in the way that having to do something creative like this, having to make something like this requires all the same analytical mindset and analytical skills you would have to have if you were to say, if I was to have them write a paper about, say, a scene and everything, but they have to apply it. I think it really does sort of make them agents in a kind of world and in the creation of sort of literary product or literary appreciation in a way that I really like.
So,
And this is their final, oh, sorry, Jen, this is their final assignment. So they have to take a much bigger portion of a Shakespeare speech or something and make an adaptation using everything they've learned.
that's super cool. I think one of the things that I've liked about, or what I see in this one and what I like about what I've been doing in Plant Lab is that it makes them have to have a public performance. Now, I said I wasn't sort of willing to share their performances with the public because I didn't quite think it was camera ready, but like it's a big deal. It's really a different, they bring a different attitude towards it if they know it's going to be presented to a larger audience, that their audience is not just me, but everybody on campus. And that has been great, even before the iPads, like being able to leverage their phones and stuff like this. But the fact, I really want to echo Jonathan's point of the hardware being the same is so much easier. Oh my gosh, like so many things are easier to communicate when everybody's on the same device versus, you know, when I was having them edit movies on their laptops or on their own, like everybody's using different platforms and different programs. I could just say, you're using iMovie for this now, and this is how it works. So much easier.
Yeah, to the software piece, I think, Jonathan, that was my question is, did they all use iMovie or did they use other products? And then what was their learning curve for those that maybe didn't have a lot of this experience prior? Did you do some of that training? Did they figure it out on their own? Did they work with each other? It sounded like kind of group activities anyway, so at least one of the students maybe helped the others. How did that work?
So it was group. I will confess, I did not give any like training ahead of time. I mean, I think that second group did use iMovie to do the cut. I don't think the first one used anything other than just the camera record, which I suppose in itself is a software thing. But so I do think, as I think about this assignment and going forward, I would want to implement more things. I mean, I will say, just thinking about this now, the biggest challenge, just because I don't know so much about how to do this and how to do it well, is like sound editing. I think in film is a real challenge to get it down and to do it well. I mean, it's very difficult to capture clear sound outside. And it's even difficult to capture clear sound inside in a lot of ways. So as they prepare to do this final assignment, I'm really curious to see what happens. But I do love the sort of like kind of early silent film strategies that might come through with it too, like with the audio from the first one of like, just have someone mouth it or something. And I will admit, I gave them the option in the final one. You can do a silent film version if you want to, or you can even do something that doesn't necessarily have to have live action stuff on it. You could do something in which you animate something or narrate something. I mean, those itself can work. But as I continue forward, I'm thinking more and more about what kind of software would be useful for me to learn, but then also to give them some training on.